He yelled at her in front of the entire hospital staff, but hours later, as he fought for his life on an operating table, the doctor learned a truth that shattered him. The black nurse he humiliated was the one who secretly donated her kidney to save him. What happened next changed their entire family forever. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated for more thrilling stories. Dr. Evan Carlisle prided himself on control of his schedule, his staff, and his operating room. But ever since his diagnosis 6 months earlier, control had been slipping through his fingers like water he couldn't cup fast enough. His kidneys were failing rapidly. The morning his temper finally cracked, the surgical wing buzzed with its usual chorus of beeping monitors and hurried footsteps. Nurse Alana Rhodes walked in with a clipboard, her calm presence a steadying force the entire staff counted on. Everyone except Evan, apparently. "You misplaced the lab results," he snapped, the words cutting through the hallway. "We're prepping for surgery in 20 minutes, Nurse Rhodes. This is unacceptable." A hush fell. Alana didn't flinch, though a flicker of hurt crossed her eyes before she masked it with professionalism. "I didn't misplace them," she said quietly. "They're being reprinted. The system glitched." "Well, next time, be prepared," he muttered, brushing past her. The guilt hit him an hour later, but pride kept him silent. 3 weeks afterward, Evan was wheeled into surgery, but not as the surgeon. He was the patient now, tethered to fear and an urgent need for a miracle. The transplant coordinator entered with the news he'd been waiting for. "We found a match," she announced, smiling. "A perfect match, Dr. Carlisle. Surgery is tomorrow." Relief washed over him so strongly he almost couldn't breathe. "Who is it?" he asked. I want to thank them." The coordinator hesitated. The donor requested anonymity, but, well, given the circumstances, she agreed to let you know afterward. He repeated. The coordinator nodded. "Yes. She's in pre-op right now. She insisted on going through with it." Evan furrowed his brow. "But who?" The door opened. Nurse Alana Rhodes stepped inside, hands folded, expression gentle but firm. Evan froze. "You?" he whispered, his voice cracking. "Alana, why would you, after everything I—" She smiled softly. "Because saving people is what we do. Even when they forget we're on the same side." He opened his mouth, but no words came. "Besides," she added, her tone warm but trembling at the edges, "there's something you don't know. Something important. And after the surgery, I think it's finally time to tell you." Evan's heart pounded. "Tell me what?" Alana took a breath. And the door swung open abruptly. "Dr. Carlisle," a voice said urgently. "There's been a complication." Alana's face went pale. Evan's world tilted. "What happened?" he demanded, gripping the bed rails. "Is she?" But the doctor didn't answer. "Not yet." Evan's pulse hammered against the confines of his ribs. The doctor who'd entered, Dr. Patel, shifted his weight, eyes flicking between Evan and Alana. "There's been a minor complication with the prep labs," Dr. Patel said slowly. "We need to rerun a few tests before we proceed." Evan exhaled in a shaky rush. "Not life-threatening." "Not yet." Alana placed a reassuring hand on the railing of his bed. Even now, she was the one steadying him. "It's okay," she said gently. "This happens sometimes. They just need to double-check everything." Evan swallowed hard. But are you okay? Alana hesitated. Her eyes softened. I'm fine. Nervous, but fine. The nurse in her was composed. The human beneath that composure was trembling. Alana, Evan said, voice low and raw, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you tell anyone? Because it wasn't about being noticed, she answered. It was about helping you. Anne. She stopped, biting her lip as if weighing words that had been locked inside far too long. And what? Evan prompted. Before she could speak, Dr. Patel cleared his throat. We really do need to retake the labs. Nurse Rhodes, if you'll come with me. Alana nodded, flashing Evan an encouraging smile even as something uncertain clouded her expression. I'll be right back, she promised. But the look they exchanged said more. Don't leave. I have to. Please come back. I will. 30 minutes later, Evan was pacing, against strict medical orders, dragging his four-pole like a restless ghost through his hospital room. He couldn't shake the image of her face. Her calm, steady bravery. Her almost confession. What was she going to tell him? A knock sounded, and the transplant coordinator entered, her expression too carefully arranged. His stomach dropped. Where's Alana? She didn't answer right away. Please, Evan said, breath tight. Tell me what's going on. The coordinator closed the door behind her. We received the updated labs. And? She set the chart down slowly, gently, as though the paper itself carried weight. There's an issue, she said. A serious one. Evan felt the world narrow, tunnel-like. Is she disqualified as a donor? No, the coordinator whispered. It's more complicated than that. He gripped the edge of the counter. Then tell me. Please. I deserve to know. The coordinator drew a breath. Dr. Carlisle, the new test results show that Nurse Rhodes isn't just a compatible donor. Her eyes lifted to his. She's a familial match. Evan's heart slammed to a stop. A what? A direct biological relative. The coordinator stepped closer, voice soft and steady. And she asked to speak with you before we explain the rest. Relative, he repeated, feeling the world tilt off its axis. What are you saying? That she's... The door handle turned behind him. Evan spun around. Alana stood in the doorway, eyes glistening, hands shaking just slightly. Evan, she whispered. We need to talk. Evan stared at Alana as if seeing her for the first time. Really seeing her. Not as a nurse. Not as the woman he'd wrongly snapped at weeks before. Not even as the person willing to give him a kidney. But as someone who suddenly carried a truth heavy enough to shake the ground beneath them both. Come in, he said softly. Alana stepped inside. The door clicked shut with a sound that seemed far too final. She took a seat beside his bed, but her gaze stayed fixed on her folded hands. Alana, Evan urged, what did the tests mean? Why would they say you're a... She inhaled sharply. A familial match, she finished for him. Because, it's true. Evan felt his pulse climbing. What do you mean? Her voice trembled despite her effort to steady it. I've known for a long time. My mother told me before she passed. She said your father and my mother were close once. Long before either of them built the families they ended up raising. Evan blinked. Are you saying? I'm saying, Alana whispered, that we share the same father. The room fell into a stunned hush. Air. Evan needed air, but the room felt too small, too dense, too full of realities he wasn't prepared to face. My father, he repeated, nearly choking on the words. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't she? Why didn't you? Alana's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. Because I wasn't sure how you'd react. And because knowing he never acknowledged it. I didn't want pity. I didn't want resentment. She swallowed. And I didn't want to lose the respect I'd worked so hard to earn here. Evan sat in stunned silence. A sister. He had a sister. And she was about to go into surgery to save his life. I was going to tell you today, Alana said. Before the transplant. You deserved to know the truth before anything happened. Evan rubbed a hand over his face. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to. A sudden knock cut him off. The door cracked open and Dr. Patel leaned in, face urgent. Dr. Carlyle? Nurse Rhodes, he said. We need you both in pre-op immediately. Why? Evan asked, dread coiling in his stomach. Dr. Patel hesitated. We have a problem, he said. A major one. Alana stood, gripping the armrest for balance. What kind of problem? Dr. Patel stepped fully inside, his expression grave. The surgery can't go forward yet, he said. New information just came in. What information? Evan demanded. Dr. Patel met his eyes. It's about your father. The words hit the room like a strike of lightning. Evan felt his breath catch. Alana froze. And before either of them could speak, Dr. Patel added quietly. He's here. Evan felt as if the floor dropped out beneath him. My father is here, he repeated, barely audible. Alana's breath hitched beside him. She hadn't seen the man in over a decade, had only heard the rumors, the empty promises, the apologies that never made it past his voicemail. Dr. Patel nodded solemnly. He arrived about 10 minutes ago. He's downstairs asking to speak to both of you. Evan tried to stand, but his legs trembled under him. Dr. Patel steadied him with a hand. Easy, he said. You're still pre-op. Let me bring him up. No, Evan said, voice low but firm. We'll go to him. Alana tensed, but she nodded. We should hear what he has to say. Dr. Patel hesitated. I'll have a wheelchair brought for you, Dr. Carlyle. Evan didn't argue. For once, he felt the weight of something far heavier than his failing kidneys. The elevator ride down felt endless. The walls hummed with mechanical sounds, but inside the small space, all he could hear was the pounding of his own heart, and Alana's uneven breathing beside him. You don't have to do this, he murmured to her. Yes, she said softly. I do. When the elevator doors opened, the waiting area was strangely still. A few families sat quietly, whispering prayers or reading magazines, but the man standing near the window didn't turn. He didn't have to. Evan recognized the posture, the slope of his shoulders, the familiar way he clasped his hands behind his back. Dad? Evan called out. The man turned slowly. Richard Carlyle, once a respected surgeon, now a ghost of the father Evan remembered, looked older, thinner, but his eyes carried the same intensity Evan had inherited. Except now, they were full of something unfamiliar. Regret. He approached with hesitant steps. Evan, he breathed. I came as soon as I heard. I didn't know. I had no idea it had gotten this bad. Evan swallowed hard. He wanted to be angry. He wanted to throw every missed call, every distance, every silence between them like stones. But right now, all he could feel was exhaustion. Then Richard turned, and saw Alana. He froze. Her chin lifted, brave but trembling. "Hello," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Richard's eyes widened with recognition so sharp it almost broke him. "Alana." She took a step closer, stopping only a few feet from him. "You never called back," she said, her voice cracking. "All those years, you never." "I know," Richard whispered. "I know, and I can never undo it. But I'm here now. For both of you." Silence fell over the room, thick and fragile. Evan finally spoke. "Why are you here? What changed?" Richard looked between them, his two children, his expression haunted. "There's something I have to confess," he said. "Something neither of you know, something that affects the transplant." Alana stiffened. "Affects it how?" Richard exhaled shakily. "You can't go through with the surgery," he said. "Not yet. Because there's a risk, one I caused. And if I don't tell you the truth now," his voice broke, "it could cost one of you your life." Evan's pulse thundered. "What are you talking about?" Richard looked up, tears in his eyes. "Your lab results showed something," he said. "Something genetic. Something that came from me." He paused. And then, just as he opened his mouth, a code blue alarm blared through the hospital. Everyone spun toward the sound. A nurse ran past shouting, "We need assistance, patient collapse in the pre-op wing." The pre-op wing. Alana's face drained of color. "Evan," she whispered, grabbing his arm, "that's where I was 10 minutes ago." Richard stared at her, horror dawning. And Evan felt cold dread rip down his spine. "What if," Richard said shakily, "it's not a patient collapse?" He turned toward them. "What if it's one of us?" Chaos erupted around them as nurses and orderlies sprinted down the hallway toward pre-op. Evan's wheelchair jerked forward as he tried to stand, but Alana caught him. "Wait, you can't run," she said urgently. "You'll collapse." "I don't care," Evan snapped, chest tight. "If someone's hurt, if it's connected to this, if it's someone we know." Richard stepped forward. "I'll go ahead. I can find out faster." Evan hesitated, but Alana nodded. "Go." Richard hurried down the hall, weaving through the crowd until he disappeared behind the double doors. Alana turned to Evan, her voice shaking. "Something's wrong. I felt dizzy earlier, but I thought it was nerves. You didn't say anything. I didn't want to worry you." Evan gripped her hand. "I'm already worried." She managed a thin smile, but her eyes betrayed the fear blooming beneath her steady exterior. They waited, seconds stretching into what felt like hours, until finally the doors swung open again. Richard was rushing back toward them. And his face was ashen. "It's not one of us," he said breathlessly. Evan exhaled in relief, but only for a moment. "It's your donor, Dr. Carlyle." Evan's heart froze. "My, what?" "Alana is my donor." Richard swallowed hard. "No. She isn't." Alana's eyes widened. "I don't understand." The coordinator said. They were going to use your kidney, Richard said gently, but a new donor emerged this morning. Someone who came forward privately. Someone who insisted on being evaluated immediately. Evan gripped the wheelchair armrests. Who? Who would do that without telling me? Richard took a slow breath. It was your father, a voice said behind them. They turned. Dr. Patel stood in the doorway, face stiff with urgency. Richard lowered his gaze. I didn't want either of you risking your lives, he said softly. I couldn't let my mistakes take anything more from this family. So I volunteered. Quietly. I didn't want you knowing until the tests were done. Evan stared at him in disbelief. You offered your kidney? I was a match, Richard said. A strong one. Alana covered her mouth, eyes filling. But then why the code blue? Evan demanded. What happened? Dr. Patel stepped forward. Your father passed the compatibility tests, he said. But while he was being prepped for the final assessment, he collapsed. Evan's breath hitched. Is he? He's alive, Dr. Patel said quickly. But unstable. Richard held up a trembling hand. Let me explain. It's my fault. Before he could finish, a nurse sprinted down the hallway. We need family for consent, she shouted. The patient's asking for his children. She pointed directly at Evan. And you too, she added to Alana. Both of you, now. Alana and Evan exchanged a stunned, terrified look. Richard took a shaky breath. You both have to hear the truth before you go in there. Dr. Patel nodded grimly. Your father said there's one more thing you must know. Something he didn't put on his medical forms. Evan's stomach twisted. What is it? Richard's voice cracked as he forced the words out. I never told you this because I prayed it would stay buried, but I carry a genetic condition, one I passed down. And the transplant, it could trigger it. Evan felt the blood drain from his face. Alana whispered, trigger what? Richard opened his mouth. But the nurse appeared again, breathless. Hurry, she cried. He's fading. Evan and Alana stared at each other. And Richard spoke one final sentence before they rushed toward the room. If you don't hear this now, it may be too late. Evan's hands shook as the nurse led him and Alana down the hallway. Machines beeped from every direction, footsteps echoed, and the scent of antiseptic hit sharper than ever. Richard Carlyle was somewhere ahead of them, collapsed, unstable, and holding a truth he'd carried alone for decades. They pushed through the last set of double doors and entered a dimmed procedure room. Richard lay on a hospital bed, oxygen mask in place, his skin pale against the crisp sheets. Several monitors pulsed with fluctuating numbers. Dad? Evan whispered, wheeling himself closer. Richard's eyes fluttered open. When he saw Evan and Alana, relief washed over his face. Thank you, he murmured through the mask. I didn't know if you'd make it in time. Alana moved to the opposite side of the bed and took his hand, carefully, gently, like someone who'd always wished for this moment, even if she never could admit it. We're here, she said softly. Just tell us what you need to say. Richard swallowed hard. His voice was thin and strained, but determined. I was diagnosed, years ago, he began. With a genetic condition called familial renal vasculopathy. It damages the small blood vessels in the kidneys. It's rare. Hard to detect. And it can stay silent for decades. Evan felt his chest tighten. You never told me. I didn't want you living under its shadow, Richard said weakly. I thought if I stayed healthy long enough, maybe you'd escaped it. He turned his gaze to Alana. And I didn't know about you soon enough to warn you. Alana blinked, absorbing the weight of that statement. But you do know, Evan said, that this condition, your condition, could make donating a kidney dangerous. Richard nodded. Yes. But I also know. I couldn't let either of you take the risk instead. A nurse stepped in, checking the monitors. We have to keep him calm, she murmured. Richard ignored her. There's more, he whispered, gripping Evan's wrist with surprising strength. Something I never told anyone. Not even your mother's. Evan leaned in, breath sharp. What? Richard's gaze flickered between his two children, one he raised imperfectly, one he never raised at all. You both may have inherited it. Alana's hand flew to her mouth. Evan felt his pulse pound like a hammer. But, Richard continued, the reason it matters now is because the transplant, the stress of surgery, could trigger the condition in either of you. Alana went still. Evan froze. Richard's breathing quickened, alarms flickering on the monitor. Dad, Evan started, but Richard raised a trembling hand. Listen to me, he said. If either of you goes into surgery, it could activate the disease. And if that happens, you might never recover. Alana's lips parted. So what are we supposed to do? Without a transplant, Evan. Richard shook his head. That's why I came, he said, voice breaking. So I would be the one taking the risk. The monitor beeped sharply. Richard, keep your breathing steady, the nurse warned. He didn't. He gripped Evan's arm tighter. You have to choose, he gasped. Both of you. Either I go through with the donation, or you. Postpone the surgery and run more tests, but there's no time. His words cut off as a violent tremor ran through him. The alarms flared. The nurse shouted, he's going into cardiac arrhythmia. Doctors burst into the room. Get the crash cart. Charge to 200. Clear. Evan lurched forward, but Alana grabbed him, tears streaming. Evan, don't, stay back. Their father convulsed, then went still. The doctors worked frantically. Clear. His body jolted. Again. Another jolt. Again. Then. A long, piercing tone filled the room. The flat line. Alana sobbed. Evan froze, barely breathing. A doctor leaned over Richard, checking his pulse, whispering something to a nurse. Then he turned toward Evan and Alana with an expression that made the world tilt sideways. I'm so sorry, he said quietly. We're still trying, but... The monitor suddenly chirped, just once. A single blip. Then another. Weak, faint, but there. The doctor stiffened. Wait, he's responding. Evan's heart leapt. Alana clutched his arm. And Richard's eyes opened, just a sliver. He looked at his children, and whispered one final, breath-fractured sentence. The choice isn't mine anymore. His eyes closed. The monitors steadied. And a nurse rushed in with new papers. Dr. Carlyle, she said breathlessly, we need an answer now. Your transplant has been moved up. Evan stared at the forms. Alana stared at him. And on the paper, in bold letters. Consent required immediately, choose donor. Evan stared at the consent forms as if they were written in another language. His vision blurred, his heartbeat thundered, and for the first time in his career, as a surgeon, a leader, a man who always had answers, he felt completely lost. Choose donor, the paper repeated. But every choice carried a risk. A risk to him. A risk to Alana. A risk to the man lying unconscious behind them. Alana knelt beside his wheelchair. Her hands were trembling, but her voice, not her voice, her heart remained steady. "Evan," she whispered, "look at me." He lifted his gaze. Her eyes were full of fear. And courage. And something else, something unspoken that only siblings who had just discovered each other could understand. "You don't have to decide alone." He swallowed. "But you heard him. This condition, if I let you donate. And if you don't get a donor at all," she said softly, "you may not survive the year." A nurse stepped into the doorway. "We need the decision now," she said. "The surgical team is ready." "Give us a moment," Alana replied firmly. The nurse hesitated, then nodded and stepped out. Richard lay still on the bed. The monitors showed a fragile rhythm, there, but barely. "Dad did what he did because he felt guilty," Evan said. "It wasn't the safest choice." Alana nodded. "I know. And I can't ask you to risk your life." "You didn't ask," she said gently. "I offered." Evan looked down at his hands, then back at her. "I already almost lost one family member today. I can't lose another. Not after just finding you." Her breath caught. Slowly, she reached out and took his hand. "You won't lose me," she whispered. "But if I don't help you, I might lose you." The door creaked open again. This time, the transplant coordinator stepped inside, her eyes tight with urgency. "We're out of time," she said. "The operating suite is ready. The surgeon is ready. You need a donor to survive, Dr. Carlisle." She set 2 folders on the table. One labeled donor, Richard Carlisle. One labeled donor, Alana Rhodes. Evan stared at both. 2 family members. 2 lives on the line. 1 decision. Alana squeezed his hand. "Choose me," she whispered. But behind them, a groggy voice broke through the haze. "No." They both turned. Richard was awake, barely, his eyes half open, breath thin, but unmistakably conscious. He struggled to lift a trembling hand. "She's not the donor," he rasped. "She can't be. There's something else I didn't tell you, something about her medical file." A sudden coughing fit cut him off. Evan and Alana rushed to his bedside. "What is it?" Alana begged. "Tell us what you mean." Richard tried to speak. "You have to choose," he gasped, each word a struggle, "but not between us." Evan froze. Alana went pale. Richard pointed weakly toward the door. "There's another match," he whispered. "Someone you don't know about. Someone who came forward before I did." Evan's breath stopped. Alana's eyes widened in shock. And just as Richard tried to say the name, a new figure appeared in the doorway. A woman. Holding a chart. Face unreadable. "I'm the 3rd match," she said quietly. Evan's world spun. Alana's hand slipped from his. The woman stepped forward. And when she said her name, everything changed. The woman stepped fully into the room, the fluorescent lights casting a soft glow over her face. She was calm, too calm for someone delivering life-altering news. Evan blinked, trying to place her features. "I'm Dr. Marissa Hale," she said, her voice steady. "Nephrology. I've been consulting with the transplant board." She held up the chart in her hands. "And yes, I'm the 3rd match." Alana stepped forward, protective, confused. "How is that possible? Matches don't just appear out of nowhere." Marissa nodded. "They don't. Which is why I didn't want to come forward until I was sure. Richard's voice rasped from the bed. Tell them the rest. Marissa exhaled, her gaze shifting between Evan and Alana. I didn't volunteer earlier because I thought I was only a partial match, she said. But after the board ran extended genomic panels because of your father's condition, something unexpected surfaced. She set the chart down on the rolling table. What surfaced? Evan asked, breath tight. Marissa swallowed. I'm not just a compatible donor, she said. I'm a near-perfect one. Higher compatibility than either of your family members. Evan's eyes widened. But that doesn't make sense, Alana said slowly. Why would you be that compatible with us? Marissa hesitated. And in that silence, something flickered across Richard's face. Guilt. Deep, old guilt. Alana caught it. Wait. Are you saying? Marissa looked directly at Richard. You should be the one to explain. Richard closed his eyes, grimacing as another wave of pain tightened his features. Marissa, he whispered, is your sister. Evan froze. Alana covered her mouth. Marissa stepped closer to Richard's bed, her expression a storm of emotion, anger, hurt, understanding, and something else that looked like long-buried resignation. I found out last year, she said quietly. My mother confessed before she passed. She told me that she'd once known you. That she'd kept the truth from everyone, including me. She turned to Evan and Alana. We are all connected, she said. By him. The room fell into stunned silence. 3 children. 3 different mothers. One father at the center of it all. And now one life or death choice binding them together. Evan tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. This isn't possible. It can't. It is, Marissa said gently. The genetics confirm it. And because our lineage overlaps, my kidney is actually the safest option. Alana stepped back. Deep, old guilt. Alana caught it. Wait. Are you saying? Marissa looked directly at Richard. You should be the one to explain. Richard closed his eyes, grimacing as another wave of pain tightened his features. Marissa, he whispered, is your sister. Evan froze. Alana covered her mouth. Marissa stepped closer to Richard's bed, her expression a storm of emotion, anger, hurt, understanding, and something else that looked like long-buried resignation. I found out last year, she said quietly. My mother confessed before she passed. She told me that she'd once known you. That she'd kept the truth from everyone, including me. She turned to Evan and Alana. We are all connected, she said. By him. The room fell into stunned silence. 3 children. 3 different mothers. One father at the center of it all. And now one life or death choice binding them together. Evan tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. This isn't possible. It can't. It is, Marissa said gently. The genetics confirm it. And because our lineage overlaps, my kidney is actually the safest option. Alana stepped back, absorbing the shock. But, you're a doctor. You know what donating means. Why would you do this for us when we've never even met? Marissa's lip trembled. Because I spent my whole life wondering why I never knew my father, she said. And when I found out, I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to keep the rest of you from that pain. Her voice cracked. I would. Evan felt something crack inside him. Not anger. Not confusion. Something closer to hope and fear intertwined. But there's more, Marissa added softly. Evan stiffened. More? She nodded. When the board ran your updated scans, she said, they found something new. Something that changes everything. Alana grabbed Evan's arm. What did they find? She whispered. Marissa looked at them with compassion that made Evan's stomach twist. Your father's condition, she said slowly. It may not be the only thing you inherited. Evan's pulse quickened. What are you saying? Marissa took a breath. Evan, she whispered, your latest labs show signs that your kidneys might fail faster than we thought. Alana's gasp echoed through the room. Richard's eyes opened in horror. Evan felt the world tilt. Faster, he whispered. How fast? Marissa looked away. We're talking days, maybe hours, before your system begins shutting down. Evan's heart stopped. Alana grabbed his hand. Richard tried to sit up, panicked. And Marissa stepped back as the weight of her words settled over all of them. Then she said the sentence that shattered the room. If we don't choose a donor immediately, you may not make it to surgery at all. The room went silent. Not the kind of silence filled with peace, but the heavy, suffocating kind that squeezes the air out of a person's lungs. Evan felt every heartbeat echo in his skull. Hours. He might have only hours before his body began failing. And he still had no donor. Alana's grip tightened on his hand. We'll fix this, she whispered, though her voice trembled. We're not losing you. Richard forced himself upright on the bed, an act of will that made alarms glow angrily across his monitors. You take my kidney, he rasped. I won't let. Marissa shook her head firmly. You can't. Your condition makes you medically unsafe. Donating could kill you, and the kidney might fail after transplant anyway. Richard sagged back, devastation etched into every line of his face. Evan swallowed hard. Then we choose Alana. Alana inhaled sharply, but didn't argue. But Marissa stepped forward. No, she said quietly. There's something else you don't know. Evan tensed. What? Marissa opened the folder she'd brought into the room. Alana's labs came back again, she said. There was a discrepancy. The genetics team flagged it. She has early markers of the same vascular condition. Alana froze. What? Evan whispered, horrified. Marissa nodded sadly. It's not active. But surgery could trigger it, just like your father warned. If that happens, she could lose kidney function herself. She might someday need one. Alana's breath hitched, but she forced herself to stay steady. I'm willing, she whispered. I'm not, Evan said instantly, his voice breaking. I won't let you risk your life. A tear slid down Alana's cheek. You're my brother, she whispered. I just found you. And I refuse to lose you, he said. Marissa closed Alana's folder gently, then opened her own. That leaves me. Evan stared at her. Why would you do this for someone you've never met before today? Marissa gave a small, sad smile. Because I spent my whole life wondering if I ever had real family. And now that I know I do. I'm not letting one of you die before we even get the chance to know each other. She stepped closer to Evan, her expression softening. And because I'm the only one who can do this safely. Evan shook his head. But the risk. I've already been cleared, Marissa said. Completely. No markers, no conditions, nothing inherited that would make donation dangerous. Richard looked at her with a mixture of pride and guilt so deep it seemed to bow his shoulders. "I never knew," he whispered. Marissa's eyes glistened. "I know." A nurse burst through the doorway then, urgency shifting the room. "Dr. Carlyle? Your vitals are dropping. We have to make the decision right now." Evan felt a wave of dizziness wash over him, proof that the nurse wasn't exaggerating. Alana grabbed his shoulders. "Evan. Stay with me." Marissa stepped forward, steady and resolute. "Choose me," she said softly. Evan blinked, vision blurring, breath growing shallow. Alana held his hand tightly. Richard struggled upright again, voice cracking. "Son, listen to her." Evan's chest tightened. The world around him dimmed. He looked at Alana, at Richard, at Marissa. 3 strangers, tied by blood. 3 siblings who'd only just discovered one another. 3 lives hanging in the balance. And he had to choose one. He opened his mouth. But before he could speak, his vision went white around the edges. A cold shiver rolled through his body. The monitors beside him screamed to life. "BP dropping. He's crashing. Get him to the OR, now." Evan barely heard the voices. Barely felt the hands moving him. Barely saw Alana's terrified face or Marissa shouting orders. But just before he lost consciousness completely, he felt a hand slip into his. And someone whispered in his ear. "I'll save you. I promise." When Evan's eyes finally closed, he had no idea whose voice it was. And no idea which sibling was being rushed to the operating room beside him, chosen as his donor. Darkness floated around Evan like deep water, pulling him down, muffling the world. Voices drifted in and out, distant, urgent, echoing through the haze. "Move him now. We're losing time. Donor is prepped. Donor." The word tugged him upward, through layers of fog, until light began to flicker through the darkness. His eyes fluttered open. Bright surgical lamps blurred above him as orderlies pushed his bed through the hallway at a sprint. The ceiling lights streaked by like falling stars. "Stay with us, Dr. Carlyle," someone said beside him. He turned his head weakly. It was the transplant coordinator, running to keep up. "You're going straight to the OR," she said. "We've activated the emergency protocol." Evan's lips parted. "My donor?" Her expression tightened, but she didn't answer. Instead, she squeezed his hand. "Focus on breathing. Everything else is handled." But he needed to know. He forced the words out, barely above a whisper. "Who is it?" Before she could answer, the double doors ahead burst open and the surgical suite loomed, a cold, bright universe of metal trays and masked faces. He was wheeled inside. And on the other side of the room, behind a curtain, someone else was being prepped on a second table. He could see only the silhouette of a body and the faint outline of a surgical cap. But not the face. His heart hammered. He tried to sit up. A nurse pressed him gently back down. "Easy," she said. "You need to stay still." "Tell me," he breathed. "Who's donating?" The nurse hesitated, then looked toward the surgeon. Dr. Samuels, gray hair, calm eyes, approached his bedside. "Dr. Carlyle," she said gently, "your sibling donor has already been sedated. You'll both be under in moments." Sibling. Not his father. That narrowed it down, but not enough. Evan shook his head weakly. Which one? I have to know. Dr. Samuels hesitated. The coordinator stepped beside her. He deserves the truth. Dr. Samuels sighed and leaned closer. Your donor is. A loud alarm suddenly blared overhead. Everyone froze. Code, a voice shouted from behind the curtain. We've got a problem with the donor. Evan's blood ran cold. No, he choked out. Who is it? What's happening? The surgical curtain flew open. Doctors rushed in. Nurses swarmed. Machines shrieked. Evan tried to lift himself again, but his strength failed, vision tilting. He saw only flashes. A hand sliding off the donor table. A mask being lifted. A surgeon shouting instructions. A familiar figure struggling to breathe. And just before the anesthesia washed over him, just before the world slipped out of reach, he caught a glimpse of the donor's face. But only enough to recognize one thing. It was someone he knew. Someone he loved. Someone who should not have been there. Then everything went black. A slow, rhythmic beeping pulled Evan out of the darkness. Beep. 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 His eyelids felt heavy, like they were stitched shut, but he forced them open. A soft light washed over the room. Not the harsh glare of an operating suite. Not the rushing chaos of hallways. A recovery room. Sterile. Quiet. He blinked, disoriented. Was it over? He swallowed. His throat burned. Easy, a voice murmured. A gentle hand touched his shoulder. Evan turned his head, barely, and found the transplant coordinator leaning over him. You're awake, she said, relief flooding her eyes. That's a very good sign. Evan tried to speak. Only a rasp came out. Did it work? The coordinator hesitated. We won't know the full outcome until more blood work comes back, but the early signs are promising. Promising. Not certain. Evan's chest tightened. My donor, who was it? I saw. He paused, the memory flickering painfully. A silhouette. A collapsing figure. A face he recognized but couldn't fully bring into focus. He tried again. Tell me who it was. The coordinator opened her mouth, but just then, the door swung open. Alana rushed in. Evan froze. She wasn't in a hospital gown. She wasn't pale. She wasn't hooked to any machines. She was standing. Fully. Upright. Breathing hard, eyes glistening. Not the donor. She hurried to his bedside and grabbed his hand. You're awake, she whispered, voice trembling with relief. Oh, thank God, you're awake. Evan stared at her, confusion spiraling. You're okay? Yes, she said quickly. I'm fine. They didn't. I wasn't, she swallowed hard. I wasn't chosen. A wave of relief, and guilt, crashed over him. If not her. Then who? Footsteps echoed behind her. Another figure appeared in the doorway. Evan's breath hitched. It was Marissa. Alive. Walking. But moving slowly, carefully, each step measured, guarded. A thin bandage peeked beneath the edge of her hospital gown. Evan felt tears burn his eyes. You, he whispered. She gave a small, tired nod. "Yeah," she murmured. "It was me." But before he could speak, before he could thank her, or argue, or apologize, Richard appeared behind her, supported by a nurse, his face still drawn and pale but conscious. And something was wrong. Very wrong. His expression wasn't relieved. It was terrified. "Evan," Richard said, breath shaking, "listen to me." The room fell silent. "Marissa didn't collapse before the surgery," he said. "She wasn't the one who coded." Evan's heart slammed in his chest. "What?" Richard stepped closer, gripping the doorway for balance. "The person who collapsed," he said slowly, voice cracking, "was the other donor candidate." Evan's pulse raced. Other donor? But there were only 3 siblings. Unless... Richard's eyes filled with panic. "They rushed someone else out of the room before you saw them. Someone who didn't want you to know they came forward." Alana stiffened. "Dad, who?" The coordinator closed her eyes briefly, confirming the truth. Richard looked at Evan with a grief so deep it hollowed his voice. "The person who collapsed," he whispered, "was your mother." The world stopped. Evan's body went cold. His mother? Here? A donor match? Collapsed? How? Evan choked. "She wasn't even, she never." Richard nodded, tears streaming. "She came the moment she got the call. She insisted on testing. She wasn't a perfect genetic match, but she demanded they try. She said she'd rather risk it than lose you." Evan felt the air leaving his lungs. Alana covered her mouth. Marissa looked down, jaw trembling. Richard stepped closer. "She didn't want you to know," he said softly. "She wanted to surprise you. She wanted to save you." Evan's vision blurred as the coordinator approached, placing a hand gently on the foot of his bed. "She's in intensive care," she said quietly. "She hasn't woken up yet." Evan's heart shuddered. And then the coordinator added the words that made every muscle in his body go still. "And her condition is getting worse." For a moment, Evan couldn't breathe. It wasn't the pain from surgery. It wasn't the medication. It wasn't the dizziness. It was the realization that his mother, his complicated, distant, imperfect mother, had tried to save him. And might be dying because of it. "No," Evan whispered, but the sound barely escaped his lips. "No, she shouldn't have, why would she?" Richard stepped to his bedside, voice soft but steady. "Because she loves you," he said. "Even in ways she didn't know how to show." Evan squeezed his eyes shut. His chest ached, not just from the incision, but from the weight of everything that had happened in one impossible day. Alana reached for his hand. "Your mom, she really came for you." Marissa nodded weakly. "She insisted on staying anonymous. She didn't want the credit. Just the chance." Evan shook his head slowly, guilt tightening around his ribcage. "All this time," he rasped. "She barely called. She barely wrote. She wasn't there when I graduated, or when I finished residency, or when I—" He swallowed hard. "She wasn't there for the milestones," he said painfully. "So why now?" Richard pulled a nearby chair closer, lowering himself into it with effort. "Because regret can be a powerful thing," he said quietly. "And fear even more." The coordinator stepped forward gently. "Dr. Carlyle," she said, using his title not out of formality but respect, "your mother refused to let us tell you she was here." But when she heard you were crashing, she collapsed from stress and exhaustion. Evan stared at her. What's wrong with her? The coordinator exhaled. We don't know yet. She's unresponsive, and they're running tests. Panic surged through him. I need to see her. You can't yet, the coordinator said gently. You just came out of major surgery. You're still on oxygen. Your blood pressure. I don't care. Evan shouted, voice breaking. She needs me. Pain ripped through his abdomen and he winced, but he tried to sit up anyway. Alana held him down with a firm, loving pressure. Evan. Stop. You're going to open your incision. He slumped back, shaking. Tears, hot, foreign, unwelcome, slipped down the sides of his face. Richard reached out a trembling hand and touched his shoulder. Son, he said, voice cracking, we'll get you to her. I promise. But not if it kills you. Evan couldn't look at him. He stared at the ceiling, chest rising and falling in uneven shudders. A nurse entered quietly then, checking his and vitals. But it wasn't her presence that changed the room. It was the expression on her face, tight, controlled, and deeply troubled. Richard turned toward her. What is it? What happened? The nurse hesitated. Everyone froze. What happened? Evan repeated, barely above a whisper. The nurse stepped closer, lowering her voice. There's been a development in your mother's condition. Evan's heart slammed. Alana gripped his hand tighter. Marissa's breath caught. Richard paled. The nurse looked at Evan with eyes full of something like sorrow, and something like fear. Your mother was stabilized an hour ago, she said softly. But just now. She paused, too long. Please, Evan begged. Tell me. The nurse swallowed. She woke up. Relief flooded the room, until the nurse continued. But she's extremely confused. She doesn't remember arriving at the hospital. She doesn't remember collapsing. And she doesn't remember agreeing to be tested as a donor. Evan's face fell. The nurse looked around the room, then back at him. And she keeps saying something else, she whispered. What? Evan asked. The nurse took a breath. She keeps asking the same question over and over. Evan felt his stomach twist. What question? The nurse met his eyes. She keeps asking, where her other child is. The room froze. Alana's hand slipped from Evan's. Marissa straightened, suddenly alert. Richard's breath caught, his eyes darting sharply to the nurse, as if he were silently begging her to say she'd made a mistake. But she hadn't. Evan's pulse thudded loudly in his ears. Her other child? The nurse nodded carefully. Yes. She's been asking for them since she regained consciousness. That doesn't make sense, Evan whispered. I'm her only child. Richard's hands trembled in his lap. Marissa looked between them, Evan, Richard, the nurse, slowly putting pieces together that no one wanted laid out. Alana swallowed, voice tight. Are you sure she wasn't confused? Coming out of trauma can cause. She was confused at first, the nurse said, but this part was very clear. She insisted she has 2 children. And she asked us to tell her when the second one arrives. The room went painfully quiet. Evan felt something fracture inside him, fear or hope or dread or all of them at once. Richard suddenly stood, gripping the foot of the bed, knuckles whitening. This could be a repressed memory resurfacing. Emotional stress can trigger. The nurse shook her head gently. Mr. Carlyle, this didn't sound like a repressed memory. She hesitated. It sounded like something she's been carrying for years. Evan's chest tightened. Dad, tell me she's wrong. Richard didn't answer. He couldn't. He sank back into the chair, face drained of color. Evan's heart dropped. Dad? Richard pressed a hand to his forehead, overwhelmed. This isn't the time, Evan. You just had major surgery. This is exactly the time, Evan snapped, pain shooting through his abdomen. Did she mean someone else? Was she hallucinating? Or... He stopped. Because Richard's eyes were brimming with tears. Real tears. Alana and Marissa exchanged a look, fearful, protective, then turned back to Richard. Dad, Marissa said gently, what is it? Richard lowered his hand and stared at them all, his children, sitting together for the first time in their lives, and something in him seemed to break. I never wanted you to find out like this, he whispered. Evan's stomach plummeted. Find out what? Richard's voice wavered. Your mother, she didn't hallucinate. She wasn't confused. She wasn't wrong. Evan felt the room tilt. Richard's next words came out barely above a breath. She really does have 2 children. Evan froze. Richard swallowed hard. One of them is you. The devastation in his voice made the hairs on the back of Evan's neck stand. And the other one, Richard's gaze shifted slowly across the room. Lingering on a face Evan never would have expected. Is right here. Everyone stared. Evan's heart dropped into the pit of his stomach as realization crashed into him. Who? He whispered. Who is it? Richard's voice cracked as he forced the name out. Marissa. Marissa's eyes widened. Alana gasped. Evan's world shattered. The nurse stepped back, stunned. And Richard bowed his head, finally letting the truth spill into the room that suddenly felt far too small. Marissa is your mother's daughter, he whispered. Which means, she's your sister in more ways than we knew. Before anyone could speak, the door burst open. A frantic doctor appeared, eyes wide, hair mussed, breathless. We need the family immediately, she said. Your mother just took a sharp turn. We're losing her. For a moment, no one moved. The doctor's words hung in the air like a bell still ringing. We're losing her. Evan struggled to sit up, pain streaking down his side, but adrenaline shoved everything else aside. I have to go, he gasped. Take me to her. Marissa stepped to his side instinctively. You shouldn't even be sitting up. I don't care. Evan snapped, emotion cracking his voice. She could be dying. I'm not staying in this bed. Alana turned to the doctor. Is she conscious? Can she talk? The doctor shook her head. Her blood pressure is crashing, and she's showing signs of internal complications. We're not sure if it's related to her collapse earlier or something new. Richard pressed a hand over his mouth, eyes wet. Oh God. I should have told her so many things. The doctor continued urgently, she's asking for her family. All of them. We need you now. That word, family, hit everyone differently. Evan, still reeling from the truth he hadn't asked for. Marissa, shaken to her core by a revelation she never imagined. Alana, trying to glue the world together while it fell apart around her. Richard, drowning in the weight of secrets long carried and suddenly exposed. The nurse brought a wheelchair, and Evan eased into it with a grimace. Marissa instantly placed her hands on the handles. "I'm pushing him," she said firmly. Alana stepped beside her. "I'm coming too." Richard followed slowly, leaning on a nurse for support. Together, broken, stunned, terrified, they left the room. Every step echoed with tension. Machines beeped in distant rooms. Doctors murmured behind curtains. The hallway lights flickered across their faces, faces burdened by truths that had changed everything. Evan stared ahead, his voice barely a whisper. "Marissa, are you okay? This is a lot." Marissa's hands tightened on the handles. "I don't know what I am." She swallowed hard. "All this time, I thought I didn't belong anywhere. And now I find out," her voice wavered, "that the mother I never knew is lying in a hospital bed fighting for her life." Evan reached back weakly and rested his hand on hers. "We'll face it together," he said. She nodded, blinking fast. But Alana noticed something else, something that made her chest tighten. Marissa wasn't just overwhelmed. She was scared. Terrified. The doctor swiped her badge, and the heavy ICU doors slid open. The air inside was colder. Sharper. Filled with the low hum of machines and the quiet urgency of nurses moving quickly from patient to patient. They stopped outside a curtained room. The doctor exhaled. "Before you go in, you should be prepared." Richard's voice cracked. "Just tell us." The doctor hesitated. "Your mother regained full consciousness before the decline. She was coherent. She said something important, and repeated it." Evan leaned forward, gripping the armrests. "What did she say?" The doctor looked at each of them, the siblings, the father, the family thrown together by crisis and truth. "She said she needed to tell the whole truth," the doctor whispered. "Before it was too late." Evan's blood ran cold. "What truth?" The doctor opened the curtain. "Your mother will tell you herself, if she can." Evan's heart hammered. Marissa's breath trembled. Alana took Richard's hand. Together, they entered the room. And there, surrounded by wires and monitors, lay the woman who had kept more secrets than any of them knew. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of their footsteps. She looked at Evan first, then at Marissa, then at Richard. Tears welled in her eyes. "Before anything else," she whispered, voice broken and strained, "there's something I have to confess." Evan stepped closer, trembling. "Mom, what is it?" She took a shuddering breath. "It wasn't just Marissa," she whispered. The room stilled. Her gaze fell on the siblings. "All this time. I've had 3 children." Evan's heart stopped. Alana's breath caught. Marissa staggered. Richard gasped. And before anyone could speak, the monitors beside her exploded into frantic alarms. Her body convulsed once. And then, her pulse vanished from the screen. The doctor yelled at the black nurse, then found out she donated him a kidney ****. The alarms screamed. Lights flashed above the bed. Nurses rushed in, and the world became a blur of movement, compressions, shouted instructions, machines jolting with electricity. Evan's breath hitched as he sat helplessly in the wheelchair, gripping the armrests until his fingers turned white. "Mom," he cried, voice breaking. Marissa froze, horror painted across her face. Alana covered her mouth with both hands. Richard staggered back against the wall, eyes wide and empty. The doctors worked with fierce, determined focus. But then, a long, piercing tone filled the room. A flat line. Everything stopped. And the world went quiet. The lead physician lowered her hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to them. "We did everything we could." Evan bowed his head, shoulders shaking. Marissa reached for him, tears flowing freely. Alana wrapped her arms around both of them, her own sobs silent but deep. Richard stood at the foot of the bed, grief collapsing him from the inside out. "I thought I'd have more time," he whispered to no one. But after several long, still seconds, the physician looked at the monitors again. Her brow furrowed. "Wait." A faint blip. Then another. Then a slow return of rhythm. "She's not gone," the doctor breathed. "She's fighting." They rushed back in, stabilizing, checking, adjusting medications. Minutes felt like hours. And finally, the cardiologist stepped back, relief written across her face. "She's stable." Critical, but stable. Evan burst into tears, relief crashing through him like a wave he'd never expected to feel again. Richard sank into a chair, head in his hands. Alana hugged Marissa as if grounding both of them. And Marissa's eyes, shining with tears and something deeper, never left their mother's face. Hours passed. The room dimmed. The chaos faded. And slowly, so slowly, Evan's mother opened her eyes. Weak. Fragile. But awake. Evan wheeled himself close, his siblings flanking him. She looked at them, pain softening into something like peace. "We're right here, Mom," Evan whispered. "All of us." A tear slipped down the corner of her eye. "I'm sorry," she whispered hoarsely. "I'm sorry for every secret. Every absence. Every moment I should have been here and wasn't." Marissa touched her hand gently. "Just tell us the truth now." She nodded faintly. "My parents, they forced me to hide a pregnancy when I was young," she whispered. "I was scared. Alone. I had a daughter before I ever met Richard." Marissa wiped her eyes. "Me. Yes," she whispered. "I never stopped thinking about you." Richard placed his hand over hers. "You should have told me." "I was ashamed," she murmured. "And afraid you'd leave." Richard's eyes softened. "I would never have left. Not then. Not now." She closed her eyes, relieved. "After Evan was born," she continued, "I found out I had complications that made pregnancy dangerous. But," she looked at Alana. A small smile. "Life doesn't follow rules. Even heartbroken ones." Alana stiffened. "Me?" She nodded. "You were my miracle," she whispered. "But your father left when he found out about my past. I raised you alone, until Evan's father entered my life." Alana's lips trembled. "You should have told me sooner." Her mother squeezed her hand. "I was trying to protect you. All of you." Evan leaned closer. "Why did you come today? After everything?" Her answer was simple, and true. "Because I couldn't lose you. Not any of you. Not again." Days passed. Evan recovered. Marissa's surgery healed beautifully. Alana stayed by both their sides. Richard visited every day, guilt slowly giving way to gratitude. And their mother, stronger than anyone realized, continued to stabilize. When she was finally well enough, they gathered in her room, together, for the first time. No tension. No secrets. Just family. 3 children, she whispered, smiling weakly. 3 hearts I get to see in one room. Marissa squeezed her hand. 4. Dad's counts too. Richard chuckled softly through tears. I'll take that. Evan looked around, the siblings he never knew he had, the father who humbled himself, the mother who risked her life, the family broken and yet somehow rebuilt. I yelled at the nurse who saved me, he whispered. And I almost lost the mother who tried to. Marissa nudged him gently. Forgiveness works both ways. Alana smiled warmly. We're all here now. That's what matters. His mother whispered. Then let's start again. And they did. Together. A small backyard. A warm spring day. A picnic table filled with food and laughter. Evan, healthy, smiling, stood beside the grill. Marissa, Alana, and their mother sat together beneath a tree, talking like they'd known each other all their lives. Richard took pictures of everything, everyone. And for the first time in years, lightness settled over the family. Not perfect. Not without scars. But real. Whole. Hopeful. Evan looked around at the people he loved, the people who had nearly slipped away. And whispered to himself. This is the life I almost lost. And the family I finally found.